What's going on, everyone? In today's video, we are going to take a look at SOH CAH TOA. Yes, the trigonometric ratios for sine, cosine, and tangent. Don't worry, it's not as bad as you think it is. Let's go ahead and let's jump right in and see how we can get these right every single time. So SOH CAH TOA is a really easy way for us to remember what the trig ratios are. So it's important to establish kind of a base case, and that's why I have this triangle right here. And you can see that right here is theta, which is a Greek letter that often denotes the angle that I'm looking at. And so when you have a theta here, whatever is the opposite leg of the triangle is your opposite side, or your O. And then here is our adjacent side, meaning it's touching this angle. It's a part of this angle. So that's going to be our adjacent side, or our A. And the hypotenuse, as we all know, is the opposite of 90. And this is going to be true every single time. And if I was to, let's say, put my theta here, this would actually be my new opposite, and then this would be my new adjacent. But my hypotenuse would stay the same because it's always the opposite of the 90-degree angle. Now, what does SOH CAH TOA actually mean? It means that when we are taking the sine of theta, that is equal to the opposite value divided by the hypotenuse, whatever those numbers happen to be. Then that's where SOH comes from. Sine S is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, And then we get into cosine, the CAH. Cosine of the angle is equal to whatever the adjacent value is divided by whatever our hypotenuse value is, hence the AH. So CAH TOA. Now TOA is simply just the tangent of that angle is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent, the TOA. So again, this might seem pretty easy. You might be thinking, but what does this actually look like when it comes to, well, numbers and values and problems? So let's go ahead and let's jump right in and take a look. So below here, we have a right angle triangle with a missing side x. Let's find that side. So what I need to determine is, all right, here's my 90-degree angle. That is my hypotenuse. Okay, here is my 30-degree angle. And what is the value of x? It is the opposite side. So I'm looking for opposite and hypotenuse. So remember, when I do SOH CAH TOA, which one of these involves the opposite side and the hypotenuse? Again, opposite, hypotenuse. And that's going to be sine, opposite and hypotenuse. So what that means is that the side of my angle, which is 30 degrees, is equal to the opposite x all over the hypotenuse, 15. And now we have a really nice algebraic expression that can be solved in just a couple steps. So again, I am trying to isolate for x. I'm trying to solve for x. So let me go ahead and multiply each side by 15. These would cancel. So x would then be equal to 15 times the sine of 30 degrees. X is going to be equal to 7.5. And if you're wondering what that looks like in your calculator, this is what it looks like in my iPad app. I'm sorry if it's a little hard to see, but I would have 15 times the sine of 30, making sure that my calculator is in degrees modes, not radians. And that gets 7.5, meaning that this length right here is indeed 7.5. Okay, that is going to be my answer. Let's take a look at another example. So I have another triangle down here where I have, once again, I have the hypotenuse. The opposite of 90 is 12. That's my hypotenuse. And now in terms of my angle relation, this is going to be adjacent. So when I think of SOH CAH TOA, which trigonometric ratio includes the adjacent and the hypotenuse? We can see clearly that that is cosine. So I'm going to have the cosine of 40 degrees is equal to my adjacent, which in this case is x, all over my hypotenuse, which is 12. So x is going to be equal to 12 times the cosine of 40 degrees. And what is that going to be? X is going to be equal to 9.19. I'm going to go ahead and do this to 3 significant figures, as that is what is required on IB examinations. Maybe your teacher wants 2 or 3 decimal places. It all depends. Make sure you clarify that before your test. But in this case, with 3 sig figs, my answer is 9.19. Let's take a look at one more. All right, so in this case, I have the 50 degrees right here. And then here, I am going to have my opposite. And then here I'm going to have my adjacent. I am not using the hypotenuse because the hypotenuse is opposite of 90. That's this side. That's not really taken into consideration for this problem. So when I look at SOH CAH TOA, which trig ratio involves the opposite and adjacent? And that's clearly tangent. So when I do the tangent of, 50 degrees, that is going to be equal to opposite x over adjacent 10. So 10 tan 50 is going to be equal to x. Therefore, x is going to be equal to 11.9 because I am doing 3 significant figures. That's where I'm kind of rounding that off. So I hope that helped with using these very fundamental and basic trig ratios and how we can use the adjacent, the hypotenuse, and of course the opposite side to figure out what we're missing and get a really easy algebraic way of finding that missing value. So I hope that provided a little bit of context and a little bit of clarity, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.